most well-known part is when Paul says, "For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain." And so tonight we're going to be unpacking that, talking about what Paul actually meant when he said that and how it applies to our lives today. So I'm so excited. But I want to start off with a little story time, all right? I want to start with a little story time. So I don't know if many of you guys know this, but I went to ECU. I graduated from ECU a little over a year ago, so roll Pirates, right? Any Pirate fans in here? Okay, cool, awesome, great. I'm glad we got one Pirate fan in here, that's cool. It's all right, I get it, we're terrible at everything. I don't know why you would root for them. But I'm going to be a Pirate fan. Hey, we'll be good one day. We'll be good one day. I say that about a lot of my teams, actually. But anyways, I went to ECU and I studied business while I was at ECU. And you know what? I remember one class in particular. Like there's one class that kind of stood out to me. And still to this day, what we learned in class that day, I remember it. And so you know what? I'm going to tell it to you guys today. Is everyone ready to take a college course? Take a 5-minute college course? I think y'all are ready. I think y'all are ready. It'll be all right. Hey, you'll learn something. So listen up, guys. Listen up. The point of this class was specifically for people who want to start their own business. Anyone want to start their own business in here? All right, so you better be taking notes. I'm watching. Taking notes. This class was specifically for people who wanted to start their own business. And this whole class was based around this book by a really smart guy, like way smarter than me. His name is Simon Sinek. All right, and the whole kind of bottom line of this book, like what he was talking about in this book, was that your what should always start with a why. I know that doesn't make any sense at all. I promise I'm gonna explain it. He said your what should always start with a why. So when he said that, he said, hey, the thing that you're trying to accomplish, the goal that you are trying to accomplish, like actually it needs to start with the reason that you are trying to accomplish that. And he would go on to say that how good you are at accomplishing that goal or that what is based off of how good your reason is for wanting to accomplish that or your why. So let me give you guys an example to bring this all together for us. Does anyone really try to get good grades? I hope all of you, right? I should see a lot of hands right now. Okay. Did anyone get straight A's this semester? Straight A's. Okay. Jericho, I'm going to pick on you for a second here. Jericho, what was your motivation for getting all A's? Like, what drove you to work so hard?
Well, my grandpa paid for the game.
Okay. See, that's a pretty good reason. Like, that's some good motivation right there. Her grandpa pays them to get A's. So, like, let me ask you this, Jericho. Or you know what? Let me ask you this. Maybe somebody who didn't get so good at grades. Right? What if I were to say that I would give you $10,000 if you got all A's this semester? Like, would you do a pretty good job? Would you do a pretty good job in school? I think that if I did that, every single person in here would have straight A's. All right, guys, listen up. Bring it back in. Are you starting to understand what's going on here? Are you starting to understand what I was learning in my college class? That if you don't have a good why behind the thing that you're trying to accomplish, well, then it's going to be a lot harder to actually accomplish it. If you don't have a good reason or good motivation or a good why, then it's going to be a lot harder to actually accomplish it. So congratulations, y'all just went to college, earned a credit. You can probably put that on your resume or something like that. But here's what I want you to see from this whole talk. Here's what I want you to see. Like, I don't think any of us would argue that Paul had such an influential life. He had such an impactful life to the people around him. I mean, this guy planted lots of churches. He saw thousands of people come to know Jesus and come to follow Jesus because of his life. And he boldly shared the gospel wherever he went, right? If I'm being honest with you, I see that and I'm like, man, I wish that my life looked more like that. Like that's the what that I want my life to look like. And I think the reason that oftentimes my life doesn't actually look like that is because my why isn't the same as Paul's. I think the reason that Paul's life was so successful in glorifying Jesus was because he had a much better why. He had a much better reason and purpose behind it than oftentimes I have. And so I think that Paul gives this to us in Philippians chapter 1, verse 20. So can we put that up on the screens? And I'm going to read it for us. Verse 20, one before that, it says, I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage so that now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. That's the part I want to key in on right there. Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. Like Paul is saying, the goal of his life is to exalt Christ. You know, some versions even say magnify. The goal of Paul's life is to magnify Christ. Now think about that for a second. I love that translation because what does a magnifying glass do? Well, it makes something that's hard to see, it makes it more clear, and it makes it bigger, right? And so Paul is saying the goal of my life is to make Christ more clear to the people around me. To the people around me who maybe don't see Jesus as clear, who maybe they don't know Jesus. I want my life to be something that makes him more clear to the people around me. I want my life to be like a magnifying glass that is on Jesus Christ. That's Paul's why. That's his reason. When I look at Paul, I see a guy who was so much more concerned with what the people around him, what they thought about Jesus, than what they thought about himself. Right? And I just wonder sometimes, like maybe my life doesn't have the kind of impact that Paul's had because a lot of times I'm much more concerned about what people think about Jake than what people think about Jesus. I'm much more concerned about what the people around me think about me than what they think about Jesus. And Paul says, no, I care much more about what they think about Jesus than what they think about me because my life goal is to exalt Christ and to magnify Christ, to make Jesus look better through my life. I believe that Paul had such a great impact, that he had true joy, and that his life looked so different than most lives because this was the purpose behind his life. And so my main point tonight and the question I want to ask you guys is what's your why? What's your why? What's the purpose behind your life? What's the goal that you want to accomplish with your life? What is most important to you? Because you see, Paul's most important goal in life was for Jesus to be magnified through his life. And it's because that was his goal that he can go on to say what he does in the next few verses. In Philippians chapter 1, verse 21, he says, for to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Now, if you're anything like me, you read that and you think, Paul maybe should have taken a couple more English classes because this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This sentence is a little funky, and I feel like it's missing maybe like a verb or a noun or something. But let me key you in on what Paul is trying to say here when he says to live is Christ and to die is gain. He goes on in verse 22 to say, if I'm going to go on living in the body, this will mean fruitful labor for me. Paul's saying that for him, his life is going to be for Jesus. As long as he is alive, he's going to be serving Jesus with his life, right? And so I got a chair right here. I got a chair, and I know that this is just a normal average chair, but I want you to use your imagination for a second. Pretend that this is a throne. I want you to pretend that this is like a giant royal throne, all right? Paul is saying, hey, we all have a throne on our lives. Every single person in here has a throne on their lives. And Paul's saying the natural tendency is going to be for me to sit down on this throne and make all the decisions for my life. For me to do whatever I want to do with my life. For me to chase what makes me most happy. For me to chase what feels good. But Paul's saying, no, with my life, I'm going to get off of the throne and I'm going to put Jesus on the throne of my life. It's no longer going to be all about me, but it's all going to be about Jesus. That's what Paul's getting at when he says, for me to live is Christ. The goal of his life and the purpose of his life is to make Christ magnified, to make Christ known to the people around him. But on the other hand, he says, to die is gain. In verse 23, he says, I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far. And Paul knows at the end of his life, he's going to be with Christ fully in heaven for eternity. And so I want you to think about this for just a second. If you remember, Paul is actually in prison at this time in Rome. Right? And so there's a Roman guard watching Paul, and Paul's sentencing is actually coming up. Paul doesn't know if he's going to be alive in a couple of months or if he's going to be put to death in a couple of months. And so this Roman guard is always with him, and I can just imagine this conversation that Paul is having with this Roman guard. Like this Roman guard would say, Paul, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you for what you did. I'm going to kill you for talking about Jesus out there to all those people. And Paul would say, well, that actually wouldn't be too bad, because if I die, then I get to be with Jesus in eternity. Like, I love Jesus, and when I die, I actually have something good coming because I'm going to be united with Christ forever. And so I imagine the Roman guard would say, well, then I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to make you stay here on earth so that you'll suffer. And Paul would say, well, as long as I am here, I'm going to be living for Jesus. And more people are going to be coming to know about the love of Jesus Christ. More people are going to be coming to know Jesus and to follow Jesus. Like, what do you say to this guy? There's nothing you can say to break him. And like this verse is so getting at Paul's unending joy. Like you can just see a glimpse into Paul's unending joy that he has here in his unbreakable spirit. I want to share this with you, that I think right here in this passage we see Paul gives us the secret recipe for joy. We talk about how joy starts with knowing Jesus. That if you don't know Jesus, you can't know joy. And then we talk about how joy is increased with living on mission and living with family. Right? And next, Paul gives us the secret recipe for joy. And the secret recipe for joy is up here. It's J-O-Y, Jesus, others, yourself. Living in this order. Living first for Jesus. Living first to serve Jesus and to live the way that Jesus has called you to live. And secondly, for others. Secondly, to serve the people around you and to tell the other people around you about Jesus and magnify Jesus to them. And lastly, living for yourself. Lastly, living for yourself. It's when you put these things in their proper order that you experience true joy. And this is the recipe for experiencing true joy in your life. This is the counter-cultural kingdom that Jesus has come to establish. The recipe for more joy in our life is not chasing everything we want to do. Right? It's not chasing after the things that make us happy. But it's instead saying no to those things and putting Jesus first and putting his desires for our life first and then serving others with our life. That is how we find true joy. You see, living for yourself, chasing every desire that you have, yeah, you'll get happiness, but happiness is so fleeting. Like, have you ever experienced this? Where you finally get that gift you wanted for Christmas, and yeah, it's so awesome for like 6 months, and then you want the next big thing. Happiness is just fleeting and fleeting and fleeting and harder to come by. You see that the people who actually have the most in life are usually the people who are most unhappy. Right? And Paul is saying it's because they got it all wrong. The way to true joy is to live in first for Jesus, then for others, and lastly, for yourself. There's one more thing I want you guys to see from this passage. One more thing. Is that when you make your why living for Jesus and serving Jesus and glorifying Jesus, when you put Jesus first, that's the only way that death actually becomes a gain for you. It's the only way that death is going to be a gain. You see, like if you would say, for to me, to live is for money. Like the goal of my life, I just want to have as much money as possible. I want to be rich and I want to not have to worry about anything. I want to be able to buy whatever I want to buy in life. Well, then death for you is going to mean being broke. It's going to mean not having money anymore. Death is not a gain. If you would say to live for me is to be popular, like the goal of my life is I just want to be accepted by everyone. I want people to love me and to look up to me. I want to have so much influence in the people around me. I want to be on the in squad. Well, then for you, death is not being popular anymore. It's losing your influence in the people around you. If you would say for me to live is video games, to live is having a boyfriend or a girlfriend or playing a sport, not that those things are bad things, but if that is the ultimate goal of your life, then death is not going to be a gain for you. Death is going to be a loss. But when your goal in life is serving Jesus and putting Jesus first, then death actually becomes a gain because you get to be united with Jesus in eternity. That's why Jesus says this in Matthew chapter 16, verse 25. He says, if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. Jesus is saying, hey, if you hang on to your life, if you only pursue the things that make you happy and the things that make you feel good, if you only ever pursue getting rich or being popular or having a boyfriend or a girlfriend, well then you're going to get to the end of your life and you're not going to have anything to show for it. Your life is going to be wasted and you will lose it. But if you give up your life, if you get off the throne of your life for my sake, and you say Jesus is not going to be on the throne, it's not going to be about me anymore, but it's going to be about Jesus and Jesus being magnified, well then you will actually save your life. You will actually find true joy. You will actually find true satisfaction, and death will actually be a gain for you because you will be reunited with your Savior for eternity in heaven. Guys, and so as I close out tonight, we're going to go into breakout groups in just a minute, but I just want to leave you with this question. Like, what is your why? What is your why? What is your purpose in life? What is your top priority in life? And what is your top goal in life? Is it being popular? Is it caring more about what other people around you think about you than what they think about Jesus? Is it having a lot of money and being rich? Or is your top goal in life, your top priority in life to magnify Jesus and to serve Jesus with your life? Because that's the only way you're going to find true joy. And that's the only way that death is going to be a gain. So let me pray for us and we'll go into breakout groups. Jesus, we thank you for being here tonight. God, I pray that you'll just help us all to live in this way that Paul lived, Lord, that you would fill us with the Spirit, Lord, and we would want to glorify you with our lives. That the goal of our lives would be making you more famous. We would care less about what other people think about us, and we would care more about what other people think about you, God, because we know when we do that, we will experience